Hi, my name is Daria Mizantsova and welcome to Politeka World Show. In today's show, we'll talk about the following. Russia's massive attacks on Ukraine's energy supply during the last months causing widespread power outages. In which condition is energy power today? What are the plausible scenarios for the winter season if Russian terrorist attacks cause an even more serious emergency? How Ukrainian regions get prepared and how Ukraine war-led energy crisis reshape the world and its economic sector. We'll talk about it with our expert. With us today is Senior Associate of the Kennan Institute, Andrian Prokip. Hello.
Thanks for the invitation. Hi.
Andrian, what do you think about the current issues of the Ukriane, of the energy, energy minister? For example, energy minister Herman Galushenko said that the infrastructure to provide electricity and heating could be repaired by the end of the year if Russia halted the strikes. But Russia isn't ready to halt the strikes. So how we could overcome this winter period when the capacity of the energy system will be, power system loads will be increased by 20%, as I know, and now we need to minimize the energy usage by 40%. So how we could balance the system in winter?
Well, the easiest answer to balance the system is to decrease the consumption, which actually is done with these rolling blackouts. But in general, the future situation will depend on numerous factors, and it's very difficult to predict. So first of all, this will depend on how frequently, how massively Russians will attack Ukraine's energy facilities. Another factor is how successful Ukrainian army will be in protecting these on-land targets from air missiles. And this, by 10, depends on this military aid from Western partners, from this air defense system that they provide us. Another factor is how quickly Ukrainian energy companies will repair all these damages, and this by 10 depends again on aid with spare parts and spare equipment, which is pretty complicated issue because in some cases, so first of all, this equipment is really expensive. And Ukrainian companies already are out of stocks of this. So we had the statement of DTEK company, which is the biggest private player in Ukrainian electricity market. So DTEK officials said that they already are out of stocks of necessary spare parts. And in some cases, energy companies didn't have enough this spare equipment, spare parts, because in some cases, these equipment, that is unique equipment that is produced by demand.
Andrian, what does it mean when the tech representatives told us that they are really in a difficult situation and they don't have enough of such equipment, such gear for maintaining the stability of the system? Because we know that the tech is 70% of all electricity power, as I know, yeah?
No, actually, the tech is not. The tech, we should distinguish here the role of the company in installed capacities, the role of the company in power generation, and we should distinguish power production, distribution, transmission. So in the case of transmission, there is the only one company, it's TCO, transmission system operator, which is Ukriane. And when talking about power generation, so traditionally, nuclear power is responsible for 55% electricity produced in Ukraine. And DTEC is a prominent player in thermal power generation, which is the biggest, and thermal power plants were responsible for 25-30% of electricity produced. And besides, DTEC was an important player in renewables, and renewables last year were responsible for more than 13% of electricity produced. But what we see now, that about 90% of all renewable capacities are either damaged or destroyed or stolen or located in the occupied territories. And the most difficult situation is where the wind power plants, that wasn't about 90% of renewables, but 40%, and 90% of wind power capacities are either destroyed or located in occupied territories. And the problem is that 67% of all capacities, wind power capacities, are located in Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast, huge part of which are occupied now. So DTEC is a prominent player, is a big player, but it's not responsible for 70%. And they operate both in power generation and power distribution. And in the second case, that's why they play a serious role in renewing power supply in different regions. And they also said that they were ready to help other companies operating in other regions to restore energy supply, like it is now in Kherson, because Russians, when withdrawing from Kherson, they destroyed completely water supply and power supply infrastructure.
Yeah, and if we're talking about the preparation of Ukraine for the plausible touristic attacks in future, yes. So we know the destruction of 40% of the facilities was claimed, yes, by our by our officials, yes, and so Andrian, and if there are the plausible touristic attacks on the energy infrastructure, what we are prepared for right now? So are Ukraine now more prepared for these drones, attacks, rockets?
Well, it's a pretty sophisticated question, and the first point is that you never can be prepared totally for a terroristic attack where energy facilities. And the second point is that probably army knows the best how they are prepared to protect on-ground facilities, and it's reasonably that this information should be classified.
Excuse me to interrupt you. I mean, how much prepared? How much more prepared now Ukraine? Because as I know, yes, when there were like the first attacks. For example, at the end of October, Ukraine hadn't have enough of reserve components. Some parts of transformator, so on, so on. Today, does Ukraine have them enough to do this repair works quicker? Yeah.
Well. Actually, energy companies, including transmission system operator, were thinking about different scenarios and different developments, including the scenarios of air attacks over power generation and transmission facilities. Even before these attacks happened, they were developing different scenarios for different developments. Energy companies were thinking about that what we are facing today. On the one hand, on the other hand, some companies did have some equipment, spare parts, and immediately when these attacks started in October, energy companies started requesting their foreign partners to help with these spare parts and equipment. But in some cases, it's just impossible to have all these parts and equipment stocked
in reserve. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very hard to say if we are more prepared today. The clear thing is that all these diplomatic efforts, negotiating with other countries, with companies from other countries, these are much more active right now. And so this gives us a hope that in future we will have some supplies of these spare parts and equipment.
But if we know that, for example, around 10 countries sent Ukraine now different components for the better repair works, what does it give for us? How sustainable this help is?
Again, it's very hard to say how sustainable this help is, because there are so many factors affecting the developments, the factors which I mentioned before, and in some cases, other countries, other companies just do not have some kinds of this equipment.
Stockpiles, stockpiles of such equipment, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this complicates the situation, but again, future development is dependent on numerous factors to give some specific exact focuses.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. If we're talking about the situation with the energy system in the cold, if the winter is cold and we need to be prepared, for example, Ukrainian Kyiv mayor Klitschko said that there will be around 200 hitting points for our region. Yes. So does it appropriate solution if there will be no heating in the city for like 1 day, 2 days and more? Or maybe we need to think about more like future solutions to escape from this coolness.
Well, actually, in this case, there are also numerous factors affecting the development. So the first is how cold the winter will be. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the focus say that we are going to have pretty warm winter this year. And actually today, mid of November, and we have very good weather, actually, as well as the whole Europe. This is a critical factor that will impact on human being in the case of new attacks, new terroristic acts over Ukraine's infrastructure. The second factor is how long this blackout or any other cut in supply will be. So will it be 1 day, or will it be 1 week, or 2 weeks? So that is the factor that also plays a key role. And another factor is will we have uninterrupted water supply? What will be with the centralized heating supply? Because in the case if there is very cold and you don't have centralized heating supply in the big city, that's very hard to imagine that water supply will be working properly. And in the case if there is no water supply and if it is cold and if there is no electricity and heat supply, it's almost impossible to survive in a big city. So sure, for those people who have some options to leave their homes from such a big city under such developments, it should be an option. But Kyiv is a very big city, and it's very hard to imagine that like millions of people just move to some other cities or small settlements to have uninterrupted energy and water supply services.
Yeah, and if we're talking about the bombarding of energy power by Russian terrorists, we know that first of all they bombarded power up to 500 kilowatts, and then they started bombarding the power, energy power for 750 kilowatts substations. So. And there is also the fear that they could bombard the substations of the nuclear power plant. You were talking about it a little bit. So what will this mean for the operation of the power grid? Because we know that the nuclear power plant is the base power for our energy system.
Again, it's a pretty difficult question. So this depends on exact facilities which can be attacked and destroyed, and so there can be numerous scenarios, but it may bring to the situation when the power system will be cracked into a couple of systems, and we may see some islands without power supply.
This is could be the most difficult situation, as I know, if there will be these islands. Yes, I know some experts urged about it.
Well, the most difficult situation if there is no power supply at all. So that's it.
Yeah.
But still, I have a hope that this will not happen. But in my case, the hope that is the only one I have. But actually, so today, more than 1 month have passed since the beginning of massive attacks over the power system, and we can summarize that Russians didn't achieve their goal, because their goal was to either to shut down power supply in the country at all, or to reduce power supply for like 70-75%. And we see that they didn't achieve this goal. So this gives us a hope about pretty optimistic forecasts for the next months.
What do you think, how these cities should be prepared for the blackouts in winter? So maybe do you know the information how they already prepared? So maybe they have a stockpile of large quantity of fuel, generators, what else?
Well, actually, I don't have much information about these preparations, and well, I think that makes not much sense to talk in this in public. They just have to be ready for some scenarios, and I hope they are. So in some cases, it makes sense to keep quiet on these preparations, you know.
So if we are talking about the influence of the energy crisis in Ukraine on European energy situation, what we could constate right now, how difficult would be the winter season for Europe, and does it give some experts told that, for example, it helps Europe to hasten a green energy transition, but others tell that they should revert to traditional sources, and nothing will go on with energy transition for for 2 years or something like that. What is your opinion on it?
Well, Russia's war in Ukraine was one of the key factors of today's energy crisis in Europe. But we shouldn't forget that Russian energy blackmailing over Europe have started before the invasion of February 24.
Yeah.
The gas price rally we saw last year was inspired by Russia, who undersupplied gas to Europe, demanding to put the Nord Stream 2 pipeline into operation. And at the same time, Russians claimed that there were renewables who had to be blamed for the crisis, and the European market model that has to be blamed. Actually, these points, these statements are nothing new, because in 2012, Europe saw a very similar situation, but the scale was much smaller when Russians undersupplied gas to the EU in January and February during very cold weather, and European markets experienced gas price spikes. And that time, Russian President Medvedev said that renewables and market model were responsible for this. The situation in Europe now is actually much better than many analysts expected.
Analysts are wrong that they told that there is a very massive crisis in Europe. They haven't seen it for like 50 years. Yeah.
Actually, there is a crisis, but Russia didn't manage to achieve its goals, and Europe is ready to survive under different scenarios, including a total cutoff of Russian gas supply. We saw that all Russian attempts to pressure European Commission, to pressure governments in different countries, these just failed, and European Union for all these 9 months was demonstrating unity. I would say never seen before unity, and demonstrated their readiness to withstand Russian energy blackmailing. And in summer, European Commission developed a plan which was called Safe Gas for Safe Winter. So they were ready to decrease gas consumption for 15%. In order to pass the winter in the case if Russia cuts these supplies. So the situation today, we see that European gas storages are almost full, and even European countries are unable to accept all LNG which is available at the market. So this by 10 has caused fall in the price. Gas price and electricity prices, and sure that Europe will face a kind of economic crisis, a kind of recession maybe even, because of all these developments. But still, we will not see the scenario when European cities would go frozen because of the crisis.
But I was talking with some friends who live in Europe, and they told me that the price for energy supply, it was increased for like by 3 times. I could tell. So, and some people even move in one flat with their relatives because they couldn't afford like 3 flats and the city. So, and they are also afraid of not having money to pay for electricity and for gas and so on. So, will, for example, will it be like any solutions for that by the government in Europe? Or what do you think?
Well, European states and European Commission in general have developed different plans to subsidize these energy bills for households, to subsidize energy companies which are suffering from these extra prices. First of all, it's about energy supplying companies, and also there is a very big range of steps and measures that they take to soften the crisis. So it's also about taxing extra profits, because some companies received extra profits when some got losses. So as of now, it seems to me that 700 billion euros will be spent to subsidize both households and enterprises to overcome this crisis this winter.
So there won't be in a coolness, yeah. So we could tell about it. And one more point about Russia. So we know that Russia now have the situation where the fossil fuel export not the best. Some experts tell that they will never get this income from fossil fuel exports again what they had before the war with Ukraine. But we know that they transform this energy landscape from themselves. They start to cooperate with China, more with Saudi Arabia. So how difficult for Russia is this situation is for now? What do you make of it?
Situation is not so bad for Russia as of now, but sure, this will change in the future. So first of all, that oil embargo is not in force yet. So embargo for crude oil will come in force on December 5th, and for oil products it will come in February. And also high energy prices. Russia is benefiting from high energy prices because, for example, they managed to earn more trading less energies. But the situation is changing already. So what we saw with gas, in September, for the first time during this year, Russia earned for gas less than during the same months of the previous year. And this happened because gas prices in Europe have fallen, which by then has happened because of full gas storages. But sure that in the midterm future, situation will be not so good for Russia, and this will differ for different energy sources they trade. So in the case of natural gas, the biggest problem for Russia is that the key market for Russian gas was Europe. And the key route to export this gas, those were pipelines. So China probably will not become a big market for Russian gas, and sure, other countries will never manage to substitute European market for Russia in future. One of the bottlenecks for Russian gas exports are pretty small LNG capacities. So as of last year, Russia was the fourth biggest LNG exporter, exporting about 40 BCM. And because of sanctions, they will not be able to expand their capacities. They plan to have 180 BCM capacities up till 2035. And because of sanctions, they will not be capable to build these capacities. So the fact that Europe was the key Russian market for natural gas, the fact that Europe made a decision to refuse from Russian energy supplies by 2027, that is the fact that will seriously affect Russian gas industry. The situation with oil will be different and a little bit better for Russia, but again, Russia will not be the biggest energy exporter soon anymore.
Yeah, and then there will be the work of sanctions also, and I think it will go on well. Thank you, Andrian, for this fruitful talk. Thank you to be with Politeka World, and see you next time. I will be happy you to join us one more time.
Thanks. That was a pleasure. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we were talking with the Senior Associate of the Kennan Institute, Andrian Prokip. Thank you to be with us. See you in the next show.